And so we have to have strategies to help us approach these gigs. Not only that, we have to have strategies coming away from them that help us assess what happened. And we have to do this from an unemotional standpoint. We're going to talk about something that I've been contacted about multiple times this week by multiple students and people that weren't students. I still check my own email. I still respond to my own email. That's how this podcast started. And so this topic is the topic that I see derailing my students the most, especially when they start playing out live, whether that be at open mic jams or with the band, gigging, whatever, playing at church, whatever that looks like for you. This is the issue I see that is derailing so many players. Now, this issue can not only pertain to playing live, this can also pertain to practice sessions. And so we are going to look at this and break it out, and I'm going to give you some very good strategies that you can use to defeat this. I wouldn't even call it a practice killer. This is a complete derailer. It'll take the train off the tracks, make you want to sit in your room, eat Twinkies all day for 3 weeks, right? I don't even know if they make Twinkies anymore. Okay, so this is the Drum Show podcast. This is the Drum podcast. It's about you, and so I have to address topics as they come into me that you all are dealing with and that I deal with myself. I deal with these myself. That's for some of them. That's how I'm able to teach them as well as I am, because I understand the dynamics of them, the nuances of them, and I am still a working drummer. I was out with the group. They did 107 shows this past year. Like, I am very much out there doing the thing. So, okay, let's dive into it. What is it? How to get past a bad gig, a bad practice day, mistakes, and how do we do that and come out better, use them as learning experiences instead of using them as a failure point. So in other words, we use them as a turning point and not a failure point, okay? There is two different types of stress. The type of stress that we always talk about is distress. That means that the system is in distress, right? There is a problem. It is bad for the system. We have to fix the distress. Then there's eustress. Eustress is something it's a stress that is, to me, is not talked about enough. That is stress that is good for the system. It is good for that system to be under that stress. A good example of eustress would be, if you have a car or you have an ATV, it is bad. It's distress for that car to sit there for many years. Those parts rust. Cars were made to run. Now, running a car causes some of the parts to wear out, right? But that is an example of eustress, because running that car, lubricating that engine, keeping things going, that actually keeps the tires from dry rotting. It keeps the car from fading on the paint job from the sun just hitting it every day in the same spot. It keeps the engine parts from rusting up. So that's a very simple example of eustress. Eustress in our playing is whenever we come across these situations that don't take us out, but gosh, everything didn't go according to plan. And so after we get done with that, we go home and we sit there and we just think about all the things that went wrong, all the things that might have been said. We infer all these things that the other players were thinking, or maybe short text messages that don't have any voice inflection. Texting is one of the worst ways to communicate anything beyond strategical, my ETA is 15 minutes, that's what I communicate with my wife. We communicate many, many years ago. I was like, I'm done communicating with text message, anything beyond just like, I got the kids, I'll pick them up from here. What do we have? Like dinner, like those kinds. Can you stop by the store? That's text messages for my wife and I. So a lot of times we have a bad gig, we have a bad practice session, and we color the whole thing as gray, instead of it just being one or two different things. So a couple different emails came in this past week. One was from a professional player who we had talked a couple months ago, dealt with some issues, and this was an issue. He had a bad gig. They happen, had a bad gig. He was a sub on the gig, got the music, I think a week before, 30-something songs. He learned them. He went in. It was a husband-wife that were in the band, which is already a weird situation to step into as a player, because you have a dynamic there between those two that some days, I mean, they could have just had a fight. They could have just come out and knocked down, drag on a home about, like, Meatloaf or something, right? And then you got to do a gig with them, okay? And so that's already a melting pot for there could be some trouble. Then you're a sub on that gig, and then you've got all these songs that you don't know, but you've learned them because you were hired to do it. And then you have this situation of now you have to play them without a rehearsal, and oh yeah, they changed the set list. Yeah, so the set list has changed now. We got to adjust that. Oh, and we're doing different versions. So all of these elements are now floating around. And if you're a professional player, my job is to go, okay, let's look at what zoo we got today. Let's get them all in the cages. You got to get through the gig, right? And so we have to have strategies to help us approach these gigs. Not only that, we have to have strategies coming away from them that help us assess what happened. And we have to do this from an unemotional standpoint. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. It is so very important that we start to take emotions are so great. They help us, they inform us, but sometimes they're not needed. And if you're assessing how a gig went or how a practice session went, you don't need the oh me's and the joys and the sadnesses. You really don't. What you need is a piece of paper, and you need number 1. What went wrong? And we list them out. So I'm going to, I talk to students so much about practice because we as drummers, if we want to see that identity change of I wasn't a drummer, now I'm a drummer. What do drummers do? They play the drums, right? That's one of the things that they do. So we have to play the drums. Practicing is one of the ways that we do that. And if you're not gigging regularly, well, then we need to practice because we need to play the drums because we want to see that identity change of being a drummer. Okay, that's what we're looking for when we start some new habit. We're looking for the identity that it will help us attain. And that's okay. That's okay. We're all doing that. So if you want to be a drummer, you have to play the drums. We got to practice. One of the reasons why I talk to my students so much about practicing and being prepared and over-preparing is because when you get to a gig, when you get to a jam, guess what? It's not all going to go like you planned it. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? Buckle up, Buttercup. It's just not. Things are going to go wrong. If you're using the house drum kit, it's not going to work right. You're not going to have enough time to adjust it. You got players that'll make mistakes. You have a crowd. Maybe you can't hear through the PA and the list is about 8 billion miles long of things that can go wrong. So what happens when we over prepare is that the music becomes secondary. You're like, Steven, the music is everything. No, I'm sorry, it's not. When you're on a gig in a live situation, the music needs to be the thing that's not in question. Let me repeat that. When you are on a gig, the music has to be something that's not in question. You need to know it so well you want to throw up. Like you need to have listened to it so much that you could recite it in your sleep. Because when we get to the gig, or we get to a jam, or we get to a rehearsal, other things are going to go wrong. Because now you got a guitar player, a bass player, a keyboard player, and a singer. Maybe a percussionist, and maybe a trombone player. Who knows? Maybe you got a flautist there. We don't know. Right? You have all these other people that are coming in. They got their own stuff. They had their own bad days, good days. PA's not working. Can't hear this. Can't hear that. This is gigging. So we have to get ready for this. And I talked to so many students where they were derailed before they even started. And we can't let this affect us 8 days after the gig. Now, I'm preaching to the choir because I still deal with this stuff. I still have to deal with this stuff in my own life, in my own playing. That's why I understand how to work through it. All right, that's the problem. We had a bad gig. Things went wrong. Things happened. They didn't even go wrong. They just happened. And now we're forced to deal with the fallout. Okay? So we have to get really good at dealing with the fallout. We have to get really good at mitigating the damages. We have to get really good at assessing what went wrong, what was our problem, what was somebody else's problem, what was something we could not have planned for, and then not taking that on as like a reflection of our playing. It's the same with your practice time. Let's say you have a practice time, you planned to practice, you have your material together, you get there, and all of a sudden your snare sounds like a turd. Why does it sound like a turd today? I don't know. And then you try to plug in and your dongle's not working, shorting out on one of your ears, you can't hear the music. All of a sudden one of the kids comes in and interrupts you and they need you to get them water or anything else that a kid might need, or your dog needs to be taken out. Maybe your wife calls, or your husband calls, and they've got it, maybe your boss emails you and you didn't turn email off. So now your practice time is derailed. Maybe you're not playing as good as you thought. Maybe you just didn't get enough sleep. And. So this doesn't just have to do with a gig. This has to do with everything in our playing. Okay? What do we do? That's the problem. What do we do? When you have a bad gig, you need to get a sheet of paper out. Or do it on your phone. I don't really care how you do it. But what we need to do is we need to physically list out, okay, so I'm feeling awful about what just happened. Why? And we're doing this unemotionally. And we're not blaming anyone right now. We're just listing what went wrong. We need the information. We need the facts. When cops arrive on a crime scene, are they like, hey, who's sad here? Wait, who's mad? Who was happy before the perpetrator walked through the door? Hey, what kind of day did you have? They don't care about emotions. What do they want? Facts. What happened? What time did it happen? Who was it? Did you see them? What were they wearing? And then they start to go, okay, we get all the pieces to the puzzle. Now we start sorting them out. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're private eyes. We're investigating the situation. There was a crime, and it happened at our gig. What do we do about it? We write down the things that we saw, the things that we heard, everything, anything that comes to mind. You just do a big brain dump. This usually doesn't take that long, 10, 15 minutes at the most. Sometimes only 5 minutes. All right, once we have those on paper, on a PDF, somewhere where we can see them, physically see them, then we go to the first item. First item is, we're making this fictitious. First item, had to use the house drum kit, didn't have enough time to set it up. Okay. What do we do about that? Is that a reflection on you as a player? No. Does it have anything to do with how good of a player you are? No. Okay. Then I'm sorry, Clarence, get over it. We're not going to spend time sitting there kvetching about, playing sucks, whenever in reality you should have gotten there a little bit earlier. Okay? I didn't get there early enough and that affected me. Or, you know what? I didn't have enough time to change over. Next time I need to kick back and say, hey, we need to wait 2 or 3 minutes until I get this adjusted. So I need to learn to speak up for myself. That has nothing to do with your playing. Zero to do with your playing. And what we're doing is we're putting action items down. This was the problem. Okay, well, what do we do about it next time? Next time I will arrive 15 minutes earlier. Next time I will, X, Y, Z. Whatever action steps you can think to do the next time. Now, what happens if there's gear failure? The snare, I couldn't get the snares to stay on, Okay, that's not a you issue. If it's a house kit, that's their kit. I'm always wanted to list what could I do. And so, because I don't want to just plan for my failures, I want to plan for other failures, equipment, other people, because other people are going to make mistakes, they're going to fail. I used to travel with a 9-volt battery because the number of guitarists that forgot their battery for their portable tuner, or they had a pedal that the battery went out on. I used to also travel with mic cables, instrument cables. I used to have one in my bag. I travel with a big thing of gaff tape. Why? Because I'm gonna need them eventually. I have an emergency kit in my stick bag, felts, washers, and I have enough stuff there, string, that I can figure out. Guess what? If snare strings break on my snare, I know how to fix it with my shoestring. Like MacGyver that stuff. You have to start thinking about what could I do next time if this goes wrong, so it doesn't derail the whole day and my whole week. And I'm dramatic about it. I'm talking to myself, by the way. So let's just be clear here. I'm preaching to myself here. Okay, so we've got this thing. Equipment went wrong. There was nothing I could do about it. It wasn't my fault. It's their fault. You can spend time blaming them, or you could see, so what was the piece of that drum that failed? Next time, is there a way that I could be prepared for that? Oh, winds up, that's a $1.50 fix. Let me put that in my stick bag. Done. You'll never have that problem again. Okay? We have to understand how to fix these problems. I forgot my snare stand one time. Cool. I turned my floor tom upside down, turned the legs inside out, and set the snare on it. Luckily, it wasn't a hard-hitting gig. It was a jazz gig, so I was able to play it. It was a solution. You know what I'm saying? We have to come up with solutions. Okay, so that's a for instance. Okay, what's another one? The band leader seemed pissed off the whole night, was real short with me, was rolling his eyes. Okay, well, what can we do about that? Were you making mistakes? Not really. I was a sub on the gig. Okay, well, it doesn't sound like that was your issue then. The band leader was upset that the tempos were wrong. Okay, were you a sub? Yeah, I was a sub. I had the tempos he had. Okay, his wife was counting him off. Bingo. Not your problem. Not your problem. So then you kindly communicate, hey, the tempos really weren't right last night. I wish there was something I could have done about that, but, Trudy was counting them off, and Trudy had a latte on the way in, and she was feeling a little bit fast. You know what I'm saying? Well, we communicate this in a way of like, hey, next time I would love to be able to handle the tempos. I felt some of them were too fast and too slow, and I do have ways that I can mitigate that. I don't want to step on any toes. I know your wife was counting those off, and so if she wants to continue to do that, that's fine. It's just I can't control the tempos when she counts them off, and I'm just going to put them where she counts them off. So this is an example of something you don't need to feel bad about. All the cross looks you got because the tempos were wrong, not your problem. If you didn't count it off, not your problem. Right? Not my zoo, not my monkeys. Okay? We have to understand, are we placing blame? No. But if I didn't count the song off, it's not my problem. If they turn around and they say it's too fast, I'm like, it's too late. We in a song, bro. I'm not going to, now it looks like egg on my face if I adjust. Right? So many times I'm like, sometimes if I can get it there, I will, but it takes longer than they want because I'll take 8 to 16 measures to slow that down 5 BPM. I'm not going to all of a sudden put the brakes on because it looks like I make a mistake. Right? So that's an example of that's not your problem. That was somebody else's problem. Okay, you followed up with a text after the gig and you got a short okay back. Well, I don't know. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they were driving. They just wanted to recognize that you messaged and forgot to get back with you. Maybe that's just how they communicate. Different band leaders communicate differently. We can't assign voice inflection for that one. So in that case, if I was like, that was just them being passive aggressive, it's probably like, no, that's just you being overly sensitive, Steven. How about just move on? They called me the next week for a gig. Guess everything was okay. You know what I'm saying? So as we go through this list, we're listing things off. Listing. We start to realize that the number of things that were actual mistakes in our playing were pretty small, or it was one recurring issue. I had a gig not too long ago. Really bummed me out. Had a couple students there. Felt like I made more than my fair share of mistakes that were obvious out front, although I had 3 different students tell me in 3 different conversations that they did not hear the mistakes, which was great. I've got the recording. I haven't listened to it yet. Still a little bit sore about it, right? And I had to reassess I had to assess like what happened, because there were band members that were mad, and so I had to assess like what went wrong. In this particular instance, I'm like, okay, so the first thing, we walk on stage and it was dark, and I missed a hit. There's some unison hits with the guitars and vocals. There's no click going, and I missed that. Why did I miss that? I missed it because I couldn't hear the guitar. Why couldn't I hear the guitar? Because I could hear it at sound check. So that was my question, because that was the first thing. And from there, it was kind of a snowball of different mistakes. And come to find out later, one of the players was like, yeah, that may have been on me. I made a bunch of changes in between sound check and the gig. I had trouble hearing that guitar all night. That was the deal. Now, do I sit there and go, that's it, you were playing for? No. I'm just like, yep, that was it. Yeah, I couldn't hear it. Sorry about that. I couldn't hear you all night. That's not me placing blame. It's just, yep, that was it. There were mistakes made on my part. I couldn't hear, And at that point, it's up to another person to deal with, because that's not me. Now, do I assess that? I still assess it and try to figure out is there a conversation I can have with a player or the sound guy or the monitor engineer that maybe can help me avoid that in the future. But I have to be able to take responsibility for my mistakes and own up to them, be honest about them. And then I have to be able to take criticism, no matter it, because sometimes people just aren't good at communicating. And we have to understand that they have this whole set of influences and experiences that they come from that may have made them a very bad communicator. Maybe they were raised in a house where you were not allowed to say your opinion. Maybe they were raised in a house where they got the silent treatment. Maybe they were raised in a house where yelling was the default. I had some friends like that growing up. They were Cajun, and man, they yelled a lot. They loved each other, but man, they yelled a lot. That person's going to grow up and mirror those kinds of, that's not for you to take on. What we have to do is we have to try to figure out what type of a person we're dealing with. Not, is this a good person or a bad person? I have to figure out, okay, how does this person communicate? And once I figure that out, it's on me if I expect them to act outside of their character whenever I'm playing music with them. That's not them, that's me for expecting them to do something that I know they're not going to do. Okay, so we have to take blame where blame is to be taken, and then we have to realize that not every mistake is our fault. But sometimes what is our fault is we let these 3 tiny mistakes that were just things that happened and we didn't do them affect the rest of our gig. And we let it affect the rest of our week. And so this isn't something you'll do once. This is something I used to do after every gig. I would sit in the truck. What went wrong? I'd be listing it out. And that way, in my practice session, I knew what to attack. There was a time where I was missing a lot of backbeats. It wasn't like 23 in a set, but it was 5 or 6, and that was too many for me. And so what I did was I started keeping count. How many backbeats do I miss? I would count them up, and I would write them down at the end of the gig. Missed 4 of them tonight. Missed 2 tonight. Like I was truly tracking, and you know what? I got better. I got better because I was concentrating on those things. So we have to look at mistakes that are in our playing. If you have this song that intros with a buzz roll and your buzz roll's screwy and you're just ignoring it for 6 months, well, that's on you. That's a mistake. Spend some time in your practice time working your buzz roll. If you have a song that you can't play at the tempo it needs to be played at, that's on you. Let's figure that out. But not everything is on you. And we can't carry these things around with us like little precious pets that we're going to, oh, here's my guilt from the other night. Let me take it out and pet it and feed it a little bit. Don't do that. Look, emotions, I told you, they're fantastic, and I love them. I love to feel all the emotions. We can't know how great love feels if we don't know how awful, it's not even not love. It's just complete disinterest, Hate, to me, isn't the opposite of love. It's just disinterest, We can't understand how happiness feels if we don't know how sadness feels, right? So emotions are good, but we got to keep them in check. We have control of those emotions. You don't have to wake up during the day and go, well, I guess it's just a blah day. No, make it something else. Choose to be happy. Choose to focus on the good things that are happening. Choose to focus on the positive things. That's something that you don't ever do, right? You don't ever come off the gig and go, all these things went right, do you? No. You come off a practice session of the gig, you're like, all these things went wrong. I'm big with my online students. I'm like, what's your daily win? When people come here for camps, we just opened camp registration, by the way. Feel free to jump in. They will sell out for 2024. We're doing 6 of them. What's your win of the day? Anything small, because the only thing we're going to focus on is the bad things. And if that's all you focus on, that's all you're going to get. And you're going to jade the whole night. You could have made one mistake. Could have been a beautiful, fantastic night of music. And you're all emotional and freaked out and, all caved in for 2 weeks because you made one mistake. That wasn't even your mistake. You couldn't hear something. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. I'm speaking to myself, by the way. This is timely for me in several areas of life. So we need to list out the things that went wrong. We need to be very action-oriented about it. And then don't just list them out. Go back through it. Okay, where did this mistake come from? What happened that derailed this? And then we're able as a band to start having conversations. Every night with the group I'm in, we come off the stage and we'll talk. Hey, what was happening here? Hey, what happened there? So whenever you went in there, what happened here? We had a mistake a couple weeks ago, where our lead singer had taken his ears out, and I didn't know that. Well, that means he can't hear, right? And that's, I should have noticed that, but at the same time, like, should I have? It's dark. I don't know. Next time I'll know I'll look for that, right? But it was new. He had never done that before. Something was bugging him. And I look over the monitor guy, and he's like, I'm thinking, oh, he took him out because he doesn't have any monitors that cut out and he's trying to hear, his pack cut out or whatever. And that's just not the case. Anyway, it was a break. There was a click going, but he couldn't hear it. And all of a sudden, it's an all skate, right? We're on ice and everybody's slipping, and it's like, how do we get back in? The bass player turns around and looks at me, and I'm like, okay, let's, we're going to get back in. But afterwards, we talked about it. We talked about how can we avoid that again, okay? So not only list the things that went wrong, but then assess each one. Go back through what happened here. What am I going to do about it next time? What can I do to plan for this? I need to work on this in my practice time. We make those itemized lists, and we do it after every practice session, not just the bad ones. We do it after every gig, not just the bad ones. And while you're at it, list some good things that happened. So-and-so said this. That made me feel good. I finally played this part right. List out those good things because there's more than you think there are. Okay, I kind of, and as you can see, I'm kind of pumped up about this. I'm a little passionate about it because I'm dealing with it with several things in my life, and I've got students that are dealing with it. And man, the mental side will just take us out. And oftentimes it has nothing to do with your playing. But there's a bigger thing we need to understand here. We talked about earlier what we want to see when we practice, and what we see whenever we start drumming is we want to see that identity change in ourselves. I want to be a drummer. I want to be called a drummer. Well, if you want to do that, you need to play the drums, right? We cannot allow our playing and how we feel about our playing to dictate how we feel about our life. We can't allow that to creep into our life. We have to get over this mental thing. Yep, that's it. I'm done with that. Let's move on, right? We can't allow this. The quality of my day is not dependent on the quality of my practice session. The quality of my day is not dependent on the quality of my gig. Does that mean that it never will be? No, I'm going to fail with that too. I'm not going to get enough sleep, not be able to get my, handle around my emotions. And there's literally been some days where I'm like, you know what? Today I'm giving myself a pass. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling very good. I'm not feeling very pumped up about life. Tomorrow will be better. I'm going to get some sleep. Today I'm just going to kind of coast to get through it, and tomorrow is going to be a better day. But if we do that every day, that's a problem. But if that's the exception, that's okay. But we have to get over this mental thing. We have to understand how to assess what happened, how to be our own private eye, our own police, and understand and get all the details. And once we have that, we assign, okay, this happened because of this. This happened because of this. What can I do about it? Action items. I want action items below each one of those things. All right. If you ever have any questions, you can always email help@stevensdrumshed.com. If you ever have issues with these things, you ever want to just say, hey, please email in. There's also a free trial for the Drum Better Daily program. It's my online drum school. I would love to have you in there. But hang in there. Look, if you want to be a drummer, it's a journey. It's not a destination. Some days are better than others. Some days you're going to feel like you go 10 steps forward. Some days you're going to feel like you go 83 steps backwards. But that's okay. Because as long as the sum total is more forward steps than backward steps, we're good. There's no problem. I'll see you in the next episode.